control, but no news fears. And clearly I don't see myself upon that list. She said, where'd you wanna go? How much you wanna risk? I'm not looking for somebody with some superhuman gifts, some superhero, some fairy tale bliss. Just something I can turn to, somebody I can kiss. I want something just like this.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back to our second week of Posthoc Live Salons. Today, we are going to talk to two people with whom I've spoken before, but I thought they would be upbeat, which is something we could all do with right now. The first person to whom I'm going to chat with is Dean Karnazes. He runs a lot. I run a lot. He really runs a lot. He runs more than anyone I know by far. He's an ultra runner. And then Sandeep Jauhar is going to come join us when he finishes doing his rounds, which we just chatted with him. So he'll join us in 10 or 15 minutes from out in Long Island. And Sandeep, he's a cardiologist at a hospital in Long Island. And both of these guys have exhausting bios. Both have written numerous books that are New York Times bestsellers, and I think you'll really enjoy the conversation. So, Dean, thank you so much for joining up in Northern California, I think, right?
I didn't have much of a choice. I can't leave the house.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I know running has taken it's become so popular, you said in the last 10 years, but also I just think in the last few weeks. And so I thought both the mental endurance of long distance running as well as the physical endurance, and for all the new runners out there, that you would be a great person with whom we could touch base. For those who are just tuning in right now, I'm talking to Dean Karnazes. He is an ultra runner. The one stat I can always remember, that's the easiest for me to remember, is Dean ran 50 marathons in 50 days in 50 states. Beyond how physically exhausting that sounds, it just sounds like it was an organizational nightmare. You must have a great partner to help with this.
It was the ultimate road trip, I think. I mean, I love running. I love adventure. I wanted to see all 50 states, and I thought, could it be done? Could someone run 50 marathons in a row in 50 states? And I figured the only way to figure it out, if it can be done, is to try it. And 50 days later, I was still running.
You were still running. Okay, so what is your biological age today?
It's I just cracked 40. I was 41 last time I was checked.
Oh, whoa, you're going downhill?
I'm backing up. Yeah, I've taken measures to reverse.
You must be. Oh, wow. I can't believe that. So can you tell us what the difference between biological and chronological age is? Chronological.
Yeah. Well, chronological is the day you were born, and the clock starts ticking. And your biological is your equivalent level of, I guess, fitness, mental acuity. What you actually compare to your peers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're the fittest person probably amongst your friends?
I have some pretty fit friends.
Actually, you probably do. You hang out with very fit people. So I know we're in the middle of this unusual time in life, but what are the projects that you have been working on? So we last saw each other a couple of years ago, and I always appreciate the invitations to go running, but I'm slightly scared to go running with you.
People always say that. They think I can't go running with this guy. He's going to kill me. But yeah. I said to be sure, like 50 miles or something. I wasn't going to push it.
So what projects have you been working on over the last couple of years?
Well, I'm writing another book. I've written 6 books, so this will be my next book. As an author, they say you're only as good as your next book. So I'm looking forward to that. I've collaborated with Chicken Soup for the Soul, that brand.
Right.
And with our latest running book. So we published 2 running books, and those are inspirational stories. I don't know if the format of Chicken Soup for the Soul, it's 101 contributors. So it's 101 different runners submitted stories. And, there's something uplifting about reading about shared struggle. We know when we run together, suffering brings people together. You run a marathon and you're competing against people for about 20 miles, and then you're all hugging each other and arm in arm trying to get across the finish line. So that's been another project that I've really, it's brought me a lot of fulfillment, is the Chicken Soup for the Soul series.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of people need some motivation right now. A friend of mine recently was saying, I don't know, I was up near where you are, up in Marin, and I was heading off on Mount Tam to go running. And she said, "Oh, I can't run. It's awful after a half a mile. I'm just not a runner." And honestly, my inside voice wasn't very sympathetic. And I thought, well, frankly, for a lot of people, including myself, running is often not, it can be more comfortable to sit on the couch. But I know you're good at motivating other people. And now there's a lot of people who are at home. And how would you motivate folks who traditionally would have gone to the gym and now find they have time on their hands and they're bummed out with life?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I usually say to people, pick an event, maybe 5 or 6 months down the road, and sign up. Choose a half marathon and hit enter. And once you do that, you have this kind of time goal that's, this time restriction that's placed upon you. And it's kind of self-motivating. Like when you want to come home and just have a glass of wine, kick back on the couch, you're thinking, I got this half marathon coming up. I got to start training.
Yeah.
Now it's tricky, right? Because all the events have been canceled.
Right. And you can't really run with other people. I mean, I suppose you can, but you can't run right next to them. But, who needs to run within 2 feet of someone else anyway?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, it's funny, a lot of people have started running because of the outbreak. So running is, it's experiencing another boom. And it, to me, is very interesting. When people have idle time on their hands, how are they choosing to fill it? Well, of course, people are, binge watching Netflix and things like that, but they're also running. So that to me is tremendously inspiring. Give people some free time, and what do they choose to do? More and more people are starting to run.
Yeah, I think it's great. I've run for years. I do feel I'm not a big. Do you run in a lot of organized runs with groups? I mean, I know you do a lot of really long runs, so there tends to be miles between each competitor. It's not like you're doing the Sacramento Marathon and it can be kind of crowded. But ultimately, I always feel like running is a little bit of an alone sport. It's sort of you in your own head. It's not such a team sport necessarily. Maybe, I know you run relays, but you tend to run the whole relay yourself.
Yeah, no, I think you and I are alike in that regard. I mean, I remember one time having a conversation with you, and you said, I'm kind of an introvert and I like to run.
Yeah.
I am very much an introvert, and I am very much comfortable by myself. I also have a relationship with nature. And I think that
was going to be one of my questions for you. It's like, my most important relationship. Okay, keep talking. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I relate to nature better than I do to people. So, to me, unfortunately, a lot of people have no relationship whatsoever with nature. We've become very industrialized, and people go from their air conditioning, offices, to their air conditioned car, to their houses. They don't ever go out and immerse in nature, and I think that's tragic. I think that a lot can be gained from having a relationship with nature, and to lose that, you become something less human.
Yeah, there's a certain solace in nature, I think, isn't there, that makes you feel when big things are happening around you. Not that they're not important, but that ultimately you're sort of small in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, you kind of get lost in it, I think, and that to me is very refreshing. You're not so much concerned about yourself and everything that's going wrong. You're just kind of immersed in something, and you're kind of in the here and now, and you're just experiencing life at the moment in time. And there's magic in that.
Yeah. I live in New York part of the time. I'm not there now. And I feel like I have such a different relationship with the city than many people do because of the running and choosing where to run, right? We all have an option. We have, like everything, there's choices to be made, and you can choose to run at sunrise and sunset when things are maybe a little bit more beautiful and quiet. And you can choose to run along more interesting routes and more beautiful routes. And in New York, we're so fortunate there with a bike path. You can really experience nature. And I know in San Francisco, you can do the same thing. Okay, so during the day, you don't just run though. You you bust out other exercises too, right? So we've got all these people at home. What else could they be doing while they're at home during the day? Work them.
Yeah, right. Well, the first thing they can do, and I posted something about this a couple days ago on Facebook, and it was like,
where can people follow you on Facebook? Where can folks follow you there?
Yeah, Facebook. I mean, just Google my name. Okay. But I posted a video of a stand-up desk hack, which is just an ironing board. So I tell people the first thing you need to do is never do something you're doing right now, which is sitting down. So
I know. Are you standing?
Of course I'm standing up. Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking, uncomfortable.
So
You're talking.
Whip out your ironing board.
So uncomfortable. Okay.
Yeah, set up your computer on your ironing board. Bounce around on your toes all day, so you're constantly moving. Just start doing that. So don't sit down.
Okay.
Do little deep knee bends as you're typing away, checking those important.
I don't even think I can do one. All right. Okay.
And then, like when we had that 15-minute break, when I said I gotta, I've got this HIIT routine, which is high intensity.
I'm sorry, I could have heard you in the background. Did I hear you in the background?
Yeah, I was doing burpees. That was me, like,
Okay, so there's no excuses, right? And folks can go online and find you on Facebook and.
Yeah. I mean, just like I said, if you Google Dean, believe it or not, I'm the first one that pops up.
Oh wow! Okay. What else was I going to ask? So running. I read this that you run to all your meetings that are 4 miles and under. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I don't own a car, so I haven't owned a car in about 10 years.
And you don't live in a city either. I know where you live. It's not like.
Yeah, for me to get to a meeting in San Francisco, the fastest route I can take is about 1 hour and 55 minutes.
And you go up and over the mountain?
No, well, that's like if I just stay on the bike path and go right through Sausalito. Okay. But if I do the route I like to take, it's more like 3.5 hours. So you're right, it's up over Mount Tam and then through the headlands and across the Golden Gate that way. But yeah, I run everywhere. I've got different size backpacks depending on where I'm going. And yeah, who needs a car?
Who needs a car? How many pairs of trainers? How many pairs of sneakers do you have?
If I showed you my closet, you would.
Okay.
You'd be amazed at how many. Yeah, and the variety, and yeah, I mean, I get a lot of fun things showing up on my doorstep, which is a real benefit of being me.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of folks are depressed right now, and when you're mentally fatigued. Research shows that you can be physically fatigued as well. How do you, when you're, at mile 123 and it's dark and what have you, how do you dig deep? How do you keep yourself upbeat during those times? It must take a lot of training, right? It
takes a lot of mental discipline.
Yeah.
And it's not in the way you might think. The discipline is not to think.
Yeah.
You get into problems when you start thinking. So what you try to do is turn your mind off and just be in the present moment of time, be in the here and now. Mm-hmm. And I just focus on taking my next step to the best of my ability and my next step to the best of my ability. Really that granular, just step by step. Take that next step. Take that next step. I don't think I've got 40 hours left to go, or I've got 30 miles left to go. I don't think about anything in the future. I try not to reflect on the past. I just think next step, next step, next step. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten myself into this place. It's almost like a Zen-like state where I can run for 6 or 8 hours with the blinders on. Basically, it's just the next step. It's just the next step. And when you emerge, you get through places and situations where you thought, I would never survive this. There's no way I'm going to keep going. And all of a sudden, you're at the finish line.
Mm-hmm. Do you breathe through your nose or through your mouth? It's a weird question, but I find I breathe through my nose a lot if it's a really long distance run, and I find it very zen for me. But I don't know. That's just sort of something I do.
Yeah, I've tried all the different techniques, and I say get in air however you can. If you can breathe through your eyeballs, get it in. Just get in as much oxygen into your lungs as you can. And I haven't found any benefit to just nose breathing. I shouldn't say that. There's a whole movement of people that would be cursing.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, yeah. There's a whole
wow. There's a whole movement of nose breathing. That might be the quote from our entire conversation. For new runners or for any of us, how can we listen to our bodies more? I mean, you've been pretty much injury free from overtraining. I know you've, as we all do, trail run, you stumble and what have you, but you must be really good at listening to your body as well as having an unusual genetic body.
Well, the thing that really gets people in the most trouble is they try to follow a particular technique and instead of just listening to their body. So, I have very good biomechanics. Like my alignment is really true. I run kind of like a runner should run. I've always run that way, just naturally.
Yeah.
But a lot of people try to emulate, oh yeah, I'm pronating too much. Let's get an overpronation shoe, or I'm supinating. I need to adapt my stride or my gait because, I run with this awkward kind of right leg spade outward. Mm-hmm. And that gets people in trouble. Your body will naturally adapt to your anomalies. So if one leg's slightly shorter than the other, or, you don't have perfect alignment, your body's going to adapt to that. So just let your body be itself. Let it run as it would naturally run. Don't try to force it into a position that is supposedly anatomically correct.
And I suppose don't gobble Tylenol and what have you before you head out in a really long run.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'll be honest, I used to pop a lot of anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen and things. Yeah. This was 15 years ago.
I did as well, and I stopped taking anything because I wanted to be able to really hear and feel myself.
And not only that, I recover a lot better without it. It's funny. It's don't use it. Yeah.
Yeah, huh. So
you're not going to have any pharmaceutical companies sponsoring you now.
Well, the other day I did an interview, and I can't remember what we called pharmaceutical companies, but it wasn't anything very friendly with regards to the opioid crisis. So yeah, I don't think they're going to be sponsoring anytime too soon. But I mean, it is worth talking about because there are going to be all these fresh new runners, and people get extremely enthusiastic when they haven't run before, and then they train for their first marathon and they really hurt themselves, and they do gobble anti-inflammatories. I see Sandeep is back from his round, so I'm going to bring him in. Hey, Sandeep.
Hi.
So for folks who are just joining now, our two guests, Dean Karnazes, with whom I was just speaking, he is an extreme athlete. He's an ultra runner. And Sandeep Jauhar, who's just joined, he's a cardiologist in Long Island, where he runs the Heart Center. Which hospital is it? I can't quite remember the name.
Long Island Jewish.
That's right. Yeah. So he was just finishing his rounds. Both of these guys, I had said this earlier to Sandeep on email, have exhausting bios. And both have written so many books. So thank you both for joining us. Sandeep, what do you think of Dean's heart for having run so much? Does he have a huge heart?
Well, I'm sure he has a very healthy heart. It's one of those, the athlete heart. There's been a lot of. I'm just coming in, so maybe you already discussed this, but the
we haven't discussed it at all.
Okay, yeah, is the athlete's heart actually sort of paradoxically shows abnormalities, or what could be easily interpreted as abnormalities on EKG and on ultrasound. But that sort of interpretation has been almost universally dismissed. So the thickening in an athlete's heart is good. The thickening in certain genetic cardiomyopathies, certain genetic heart diseases is not good. So running is very good, and I'm sure Dean has a great heart.
But I'm impressed. Do you treat athletes? I'm impressed. This.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't specifically treat athletes, but I treat people who are athletic. And I know that there's been a lot of controversy over how to screen for heart disease in competitive athletes, especially in college. That's been a huge discussion that I actually wrote an op-ed about it some time ago in the New York Times. But the basic, issue is that, some number of competitive college athletes die every year suddenly of sudden death, sudden cardiac death.
This column of yours, yeah.
Yeah, so like Hank Gathers, died, and there've been others, and there've been very shocking incidents. Presumably healthy, active young people just suddenly dying. So, and a lot of them seem to die from genetic heart diseases. So the question has always been, how do we screen for those people? Is it worth screening? Or are the tests that we do, like EKGs, are they going to pick up what we'd call false positives, people who look like they have disease, but they actually don't? Like you, Dean, for example, if I did an EKG on you, you probably have high voltages. You may have some repolarization abnormalities. That's just talk for, what we now know are benign abnormalities. But unless you have someone who knows what they're doing, interpret it, you as a young, 18-year-old college athlete could be, dismissed from your athletic program because of benign abnormalities. So the question has always been, do we do EKG screening on everyone, or do we do EKG screening on some people? So there's been a big controversy about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested in the subject.
Dean, have you had your heart tested many times? Probably, right?
I've had everything pretty much tested. To my gut biome, to obviously I have chronic anemia, and a lot of doctors said, "Wow, your red blood cell count is so low," but it's been ongoing. I'm from the Mediterranean. I'm 100% Greek, so they said and we know that runners experience there's a running related anemia. So that's another thing that's wrong with me, supposedly, as well as I think it's my right ventricle. Which chamber of your heart gets really developed? Or is your left ventricle?
The left ventricle is the chamber that pumps blood to the main part of the body, to the muscles that are used in. But you probably have like G6PD deficiency, right? Is that what they call it?
Yep.
There's an enzyme especially in people who are derived from Mediterranean descent, who can have this deficiency in enzyme that can predispose to anemia. So,
well, and my mother has anemia lifelong, but she comes from an island called Icaria, which is one of the blue zones. I don't know if you're aware of the blue zones.
What does that mean?
No.
That's 7 areas in the world where the indigenous population lived to be the longest. So,
okay.
Zones is in the Pyrenees Mountains. One is in the mountains of Japan outside of Osaka.
Yeah, Okinawa.
Yeah. I know there's this Greek island called Icaria, and they have the highest concentration of centenarians on the planet on this one island. And these people are amazing. I mean, these men and women in their early hundreds are still out hiking every day, gardening.
Amazing, yeah. I'm very interested in that subject also. I think most of us are like, what is it about their lifestyles that promotes long life? And I read a little bit about it. One article I read, or maybe I think it was a magazine piece, but the one thing I remember that was just so salient to me was that people in like Italy and in Okinawa and some of these places, one of the things that is common is that no one uses an alarm clock. They sleep till they're rested.
I don't use an alarm clock.
You know what I mean? It's like, when you think about it. Huh?
Do you use one, Dean? Do you use an alarm clock? Oh, you probably.
No, after learning about the Icarians, after going to Icaria and seeing how they lived and letting their body just naturally wake up, we were still sleeping about the same amount of time, but I was waking up to an alarm. I threw away my alarm. I literally.
Yeah, it's a shock to the system, and I mean, unfortunately, I have to, have an alarm clock. But it's that's one thing I remember is.
Well, and the other thing, I mean, obviously their diet is because they're growing all their own food, but multiple generations of families live with each other. So the yaya, the papu, and the yaya, are with the parents or with the grandchildren. So they all, it's very communal in that regard. It's much closer, and it's much less. There's much less social distancing going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sandeep, can you give us some heart facts of sort of how many people die each year, or how many people have heart disease in America? And can you shock us with some heart facts? Do you have any off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, so heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States and in the world. So, there's probably 1 in 3 Americans will develop cardiovascular disease in their lifetime. So, not necessarily leading to death, but that's a huge public health problem. And one of the things that I write about in my book Heart was that so much of the work that was done in the 20th century was focused on the technological aspects of the heart. The heart is a machine. So the heart is like, 4 chambers served by pipes that ferry blood, and they're wires. So it's like a house. And so we think of that model when we conceptualize heart disease. But one of the things that I really talk about in the book is how the old model of the heart as a metaphorical object, one that contains the emotions, is actually still very relevant in the modern world. And it's increasingly becoming clear that the mechanical heart, the biological heart, the one that we, that we focus on, is very responsive to our emotions. And actually, emotions can cause profound effects on the heart. They can cause disease in the heart that is very profound and deadly. So, for example, I talk, and you and I talked, at the salon about broken heart syndrome,
right?
Where grief can affect the heart in such profound ways that I've seen patients whose family member dies. They come into the hospital. We do an ultrasound. Their heart is half as weak as normal, and then when their emotional state returns to normal, the heart also returns to normal. And now, with the COVID outbreak, we're seeing a lot of heart disease, and it may be that the virus itself is infecting the heart, but many of my colleagues think that some of the heart manifestations are due to stress, so-called stress cardiomyopathy, a kind of broken heart where extreme physical or emotional stress related to the viral pandemic is causing our hearts to weaken. So this interplay between the metaphorical heart or the emotional heart and the biological or mechanical heart is just very fascinating to me.
That's why I wanted to have you on, because I thought, I feel like right now everyone's heart is a little bit broken, and people are so very stressed, and it must have an effect on your patients, or you would see new people coming in. It's hard to measure, though, one's emotional health, right? I mean, it's much easier to measure one's cholesterol.
Yeah, I think that's why the problem has been largely ignored in the cardiology profession and in medicine in general. It's just, I wrote in the book, we talked about it, that it's just so much easier to lower cholesterol than it is emotional stress. And so, you can pop a pill and lower your cholesterol very reliably, or lower your blood pressure. But to improve your emotional state, to lower your emotional distress, is exceedingly difficult. And I think that's one of the reasons why the American Heart Association focuses on cholesterol and blood pressure as causes of heart disease, but doesn't even mention emotional stress.
They don't, huh?
No. It's not considered a modifiable risk factor. I think.
Do you ever recommend running for your patients?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I recommend. I'm not a runner like you guys, but I run every day. But I don't run it.
You're a runner. That's a pretty.
Runner.
Really? Okay, I'll take it. I actually love running. But like I run, maybe 2 miles, and that's it. but I so you know, but I
How
do
long
it.
would it take you to run 2 miles, just out of curiosity,
It
roughly?
depends on how fast, you know, I want to run. You know, some days I just want to have a very leisurely jog. Like this morning, I probably ran 2 miles in like 20 minutes.
That's
So,
good.
it just to run around the block, clear my mind, whatever. And I can go faster, but I don't always want to. And most of the reason why I run is to control my emotional stress, because I have a stressful job and these are stressful times, and they have been for a long time before the pandemic. I mean, just the emotional stress of our politics is highly, is a part of the fabric of American life. So I run just to clear my head, and it's extremely helpful. I mean, I don't really get that feeling that I get after a run from anything else. And I've tried different things, like I'll try other things in the gym, like isometric exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, even lifting weights doesn't do it for me. Yoga, meditation doesn't really do it for me. I'm
And
not sure
I've
why.
met so many ex-runners that, older runners that can't run anymore, and they always have this kind of forlorn, like,
Yeah,
romantic look in their eye. They say, "Well, I bike a lot now," or, "I do yoga, I
yeah,
go to the gym," but they just say
and that
it's not the same. Yeah.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I limit myself when I run, because I like to run every day. And if I like crank it up, I just know I'm going to develop like arthritis or something. So I want to like, what's that?
I said, don't. I've got a couple 100,000 miles on this chassis, so don't talk about arthritis, because
Yeah, no. Okay,
I don't
well,
buy I don't
God
buy
forbid.
that.
Yeah,
You
no, God forbid. But I just don't like I used to run more like when I was a resident, and it was really stressful. And I developed a bad case of plantar fasciitis.
The
Um,
worst. It's so depressing to get
to
that.
the point where I couldn't run, and it was just a misery. And so I decided, you know what? I'd rather run a little bit every day
Right.
than run for 6 months and be out for 6 months. So
Yeah. Well, before you joined, Sandeep, we were talking about spending time in nature. And Dean he does a ton of trail running, and it feels like it's so healthy for us emotionally, to be around trees and in nature when you're running. Are you doing it outside? Yeah, you must be
I
right
have
now.
to now, but I normally I was going to a gym, and now, well, before this whole thing, and then now I'm doing it outside, and I forgot how much better it is.
Oh, I mean, it's just the best. And you might trip and fall, but I always feel like those running machines can be a little dangerous. That's just me, because I'm a klutz.
Yeah, no, but it's just that kind of claustral environment of a busy gym, and you think I sort of forgot. Like I used to run on the East River when I was at Cornell doing my residency,
Yeah.
and I just forgot that feeling of like looking at the water and feeling the breeze, and then I sort of transferred to the treadmill in at a gym, and it's not the same.
I was going to ask you, but maybe running is the answer. Sandeep, how do you look after your metaphorical heart?
I run. That to me is a big thing. But people ask me a lot, like, how do I control my emotional state? How do I prevent things like stress-induced heart disease and so on? And it varies. My wife Sonia, she loves yoga. I mean, she's a huge practitioner of
Wow.
Bikram and Ashtanga, and I've tried to do that, but it doesn't do the same thing for me. So people have different ways of coping with stress, so it's just what works for you. But I think just the awareness that we need to focus on it, and not just focus on what we eat. That's one of the main messages I think we need to get out.
Yeah, and encourage people. Everyone is stuck at home now, to really take the time to go outside. And we're all trying to control things. I feel like I'm shining a lot of silver. I'm polishing my furniture a lot. I'm doing a lot of ironing, things that I could make nice, small, cheery changes in my life. But we can also all try and get outside when there's fewer people around. Dean, is there much depression? I know there's depression, obviously, with those in the medical world and interns, and it's very stressful. But Dean, is there much depression at all, or mental health issues in the running world?
Well, there is, and I think that's largely an account of a lot of people start running because of mental issues.
Oh,
and relief. So a lot of people turn to running as a relief mechanism, and it works. So especially with ex-runners, there's a tremendous amount of depression and mental illness. But it's opening. More and more people are opening up and saying, I was on Prozac or whatever, and now I run. So that's pretty commonplace.
Yeah. Sandeep, are there any wellness regimes that we should be paying attention to as a heart doctor? Anything you could recommend?
Well, so people ask me about the diet, and
not pork belly 3 times a day, like I'm always serving.
Yeah, no, I mean, so no, I love your dinners, by the way. I love your pork belly.
I don't eat that way myself very much.
Yeah, no, that puts life in me. But I mean, I think there's a lot of good data supporting the Mediterranean diet.
Mm-hmm.
But I tend to just follow, Michael Pollan's, 3 rules. Eat food, real food, not too much, mostly plants, and I think that is a pretty good prescription for at least dietary heart health.
Yeah. Let's see. How do you eat, Dean?
I eat like they eat in Icaria. So I say if you can't pick it from a tree or dig it from the earth or catch it with your hands, I don't eat it. So pretty much, everything I eat is raw. I don't cook anything.
Wow.
And, yeah.
Oh, that saves a lot of time.
Nothing in a bag. Do you remember Jack LaLanne? He was one of my mentors. Do you remember that Jack LaLanne?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. He told me. He said, Dean, if man makes it, don't eat it, and if it tastes good, spit it out.
How long did he live?
He lived to be 95. Yeah,
Wow.
and he was in good health at 95. Yeah.
Do you eat meat?
Very little. I eat primarily fish. So I live in Northern California. So I eat wild Pacific salmon or sardines probably 4 or 5 days a week. I eat, like this morning, I had a tin of sardines and olive oil. That was my breakfast. And a cup of coffee. Yeah.
Very heart healthy.
That is heart healthy.
Andy, what did you have for breakfast?
Just don't burp on any friends. I know.
Right. I make I make a smoothie in the morning.
Okay, so we're all extremely healthy. I get a farm box, and I have to say it's one of the things I'm so appreciative of right now. I haven't been to a supermarket for over a month, though I'm now beginning to get a little low on food. But
Wow.
yeah, I get a farm box, and it's great. Yeah, and I'm in LA. You're both writers. Sandeep, you must be working on another book. I'm sure you have another book in you, right?
I would like to write another book. I am sort of thinking about writing another book, but I don't know how, I'm not really too far along, but yeah, I mean, I think, well, Dean knows that, once you write a book and people like it and it sort of infects your system. You want to keep writing. I find writing actually I find it quite miserable, to be honest. I was going to say I find it relaxing, but I don't. I don't find it relaxing at all.
1% inspiration, 99% perspiration.
Yeah, I was telling my I was telling my daughter when I was struggling with something recently, and she was just like, "Why are you putting yourself through this?" And I can't help it. So.
I do a lot of writing when I'm running. So I have some of my clear thoughts when I'm out running, especially by myself. So I carry a digital recorder and I dictate, and then I put in an earbud and type up my notes. And that's a great way for me to write some books. It's just go on a long run.
I do the same thing. Not when I'm running, but actually, well, when I was living in Manhattan and commuting to the island for work, I wrote probably a good portion of my first book called Intern while I was driving, just dictating into a tape recorder.
Yeah. It is. It's the discipline of doing it. No one's really asking you to do it. So
Right.
it must come from inside. Sandeep, what are you struggling with most right now? We're all struggling with something with this time spent at home and this unusual time at work. I mean, you're working in a hospital. What are you struggling with right now?
I mean, personally, there's obviously the disruption of life. Kids are, their schools have closed. They're at home. My wife's office is closed.
There's 2 doctors in your family, right?
Yeah, that's right. So she's doing some telemedicine, but that is like the smallest part. I mean, that's a relatively small part of it. But like coming to the hospital, I was actually off for a week, and I came back, and it is a horror show. I mean, really, New York, and there's so much COVID, and there are so many people who are dying.
Yeah.
They're dying in hospitals across New York, and it's really as bad as people say.
Mm-hmm.
It's when I was off for that week, I actually, I deliberately didn't go out into the wards to see what was going on because, I was practicing social distancing. It's easy to forget, when you're at home or even in an office, what's going on. But I assure you that it is, it's as horrible as, you hear about on the television news. It's really bad right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even the worst part of it yet. I mean, it's going to get worse.
Right, over the next few weeks. Dean, your schedule, Dean, must have really changed because I know you're always flying around and running in different countries, and you're home.
Well, that's the one thing that I'm really struggling with is I feel useless. Like I can't contribute. I'm not a doctor. The way I give back to people is doing these global tours where people come to my book signings. Fans show up for my fun runs, and they get a lot out of it. They want to take a selfie with me, and I feel like I'm really giving back to people, and they write me, these incredible letters saying it was such an honor to meet you, and you really inspired me. And there's none of that going on now, so I just feel very useless and very irrelevant. And the other thing that Sandeep hit upon is, I've traveled enough to see how other people live in other places, and what we're going to be subjected to in the next, I think, year of human suffering and misery is going to be psychologically overwhelming for anyone. Mm-hmm. Because I think we're going to hear stories about, mass graves in areas, like I went to the refugee camps in Greece, for instance. If there's one case in that refugee camp, it's the whole camp. There's just no way to distance people, and they do not have ventilators and masks. They have nothing. Right. So when that starts happening, I think, from a psychologically traumatic standpoint, it's going to be rough for a lot of people. Myself, mm-hmm. I just take a lot of it personally, and it's going to be tough to see this go down.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many. Yeah, I mean, there's so many sort of ancillary consequences. It's not just the people who are sick, but like my 80-year-old dad. I haven't been able since I've been in the hospital. I'm avoiding visiting him.
Sure.
I've visited him for very, very short periods, but he has cognitive, memory problems. He doesn't quite understand why I'm not coming over.
Right.
We have someone there to help him 24/7, but it's not the same. And there's apart from the direct effects of the infection of the pandemic is all the isolation and the loneliness that's goes along with it, especially in elderly people,
right.
Some of whom may not even understand what's going on. So it's
yeah.
Well, I don't know where you guys what's happening in your areas, but here in Northern California, there's just been this collective relief valve going on at 8 p.m. every night. where people just go out and they howl. It's the strangest thing. I mean, it's supposed to be an appreciation for people like you, Sandeep, for all the providers and all the delivery people that are out still, working harder than ever to support us all. But it's incredible how many people are banging on pots, and I mean, it echoes throughout the mountains. It's this collective and kind of beautiful human moment it's hard to digest. I mean, if I was
animalistic, I think, right? I mean,
it's amazing. I mean, thousands of people outside of their houses just howling at the moon and banging on pots, and it's stirring. Yeah.
Well, let's end on a brighter note, Dean. There are some moments of good moments, I think, during this, whether it's spending time with your family or being out in nature. What have you got coming up this weekend, or some new habits that you've gotten into with your family over the last few weeks?
I've been doing crossword puzzles with my mother vicariously. She's big into crossword puzzles. She lives in Southern California.
Yeah.
So I started doing them as well, and they're tough. I see why I've never done crossword puzzles. They're tough. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Sandeep? What's happening out in Long Island as the family? What are you going to do this weekend? Anytime?
This weekend, I don't know. Fortunately, I'm not in the hospital.
Yeah.
Next weekend, I just was informed today that I'm going to be on night duty for 2 days in a COVID unit. So, which is important. I mean, someone has to be there at night. And so that's going to be me next weekend for 2 straight nights, Saturday and Sunday. So this weekend, I don't know. I mean, probably did more of the same, running and hanging out. I've been watching. Oh, I'm so, I discovered, well, I'm embarrassed to say that I was a very late comer to Breaking Bad.
I haven't seen it. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's incredible. So I've been binge watching that when I come home from the hospispital.
I thought you were going to do
more of that.
So
yeah.
What did you just say, Dean?
I thought Sandeep was I've been binge watching Glee Club.
My daughter's been doing that.
Really bad. Got really desperate.
Well, thank you guys both so much for joining today. I really enjoyed it, and I know others will too. And we will share this far and wide. And Sandeep, thanks for taking the time out amongst your super busy schedule. And Dean, thanks for pausing for a moment. By the way, Dean is standing up, Sandeep, just so you know.
No, I can. I sort of could tell that.
Thanks for having me on, and Sandeep, thanks for doing God's work. Be strong. Yeah.
Sure.
Really, thank you. And tomorrow, the topic is going to be, pretty different. It's going to be the food system. So I have a lot of reading to do between now and tomorrow. I'm going to have 3 different people on. One is Tobias Peggs. He is the CEO of a company called Square Roots, which he started with Kimball Musk. And they do urban farming and are still providing vegetables and whatnot to folks in the areas that they are. They're based in New York. So it'll be interesting talking to him and Claire Reckenbach. And she is the CEO of the James Beard Foundation. And they're doing a lot of work right now with, of course, all the folks in the hospitality industry and restaurants. And then Chloe Servino, who is the food drinks reporter at Forbes and also covers billionaires. And maybe there's a few less of them now. I don't know. So please join us again tomorrow. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I've been reading books of old, the legends and the myths, Achilles and his gold, Achilles and his gifts, Spider-Man's control, and